Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our wonderful panel speakers that we have. With the title, If You Share an Economy, How Many People Get a Slice? Let's welcome Joel Neo, founder of KFIT, Kel J. Lim, head of Grab Singapore, and moderator Josh Harwitz, Asia correspondent Quartz. The wonderful trio on stage, please.
So live your life. You steady chasing that big car, just live your life. Ain't got no time for no haters, just live your life. No telling where it'll take ya, just live your life.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming. Thank you all for coming. Really excited to do this panel on the sharing economy. So let's just get started right away. So as I was preparing for this panel, I did a little reading and research, and I realized that at my publication at Quartz, someone had written a piece that talked about how there are so many names for this so-called sharing economy. There's the sharing economy, there's the gig economy, the networked economy, the on-demand economy, but none of these terms really capture what this trend is about. So I wanted to ask you guys, as people that are running startups that deal in this industry, if you guys could think of maybe one term to describe, maybe better captures this industry than the sharing economy. What term might that be?
All right, firstly, thanks, Josh, for not giving us a heads up on the question. So it makes it really tough. So I think a lot of times, we read about it in the media, so maybe individuals like yourself will write about the fitness sharing economy, right? But internally in the office, none of us speak in that language. The word sharing doesn't even occur to us, right? I think the way we look at it is, say, for example, on the business side of things, gyms and fitness studios have a lot of unutilized slots. So those are terms that we use. And customers do not have the option of the flexibility to work out in different places. So I think flexibility, convenience, affordability, those are words that we use. So I think typically we talk about value proposition as a platform, to consumers and to partners.
I think and I just wanted to echo Joel. Thanks for not giving the heads up.
You're welcome.
So I think for Grab, we kind of sort of stumbled into the sharing economy, right? We started off with a problem. And for us, the problem was on safety. And when we started in Malaysia, taking a taxi in Singapore, in Malaysia was probably one of the most horrifying experiences you can have as growing up in Malaysia. In Singapore, the problem was slightly different, right? There was massive urbanization. The population was booming, infrastructure was struggling to keep up, and this applies to all the other countries as well in Southeast Asia in general, and that's why demand for cars, because point-to-point transportation was tough, so you need a car to move around, right? Because you can't rely on public transport, and then demand for cars was high, and it became one of the most expensive places to own a car, and despite that, you spend 5 to 10% driving your car. So you spend maybe like for example, you're from the US, right?
Yes.
And how much does a car, let's say a mid-sized car like a Civic or a Mazda 3 cost in the US?
It's going to cost a lot of money.
So it's probably about $20,000 US,
right,
thereabouts, right? In Singapore, it's about 80,000. And people buy the cars, and in Malaysia it's not that much cheaper as well. So people will literally take out a decade-long loan to own the car, and yet they spend 5 to 10% driving the car, and most of the time it's sitting either in the parking lot, at home, not being utilized. So, and at the same time, we've got 28,000 taxis in Singapore, doing about 1 million rides, and it's still not enough. Right? You still can't get a cab sometimes during peak hours or when it rains. So why not turn all these cars, unutilized cars, into a node in the transport system? So that's where we kind of come in. and stumbled into the sharing economy. It started off differently, but we're now part of this fabric.
Do you think that that term, the sharing economy, is apt for what you guys do, or do you think that you fit into something different? Do you see yourself as having nothing in common with Joel or then the folks at Honest Bee, for example, or do you think that you guys have lots in common?
I think the one biggest difference, I think, is the on-demand part of it. So things like transportation or maybe food delivery are the two things that you would need on demand, like you need it now or within at least the next 15, 20 minutes. Whereas the other sharing economy, maybe you don't have that kind of urgency. So maybe that's the slight difference here between us.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is when I look at commerce, right, or e-commerce, mobile commerce, is divided into two groups. There's one group of e-commerce platforms that provide delivery, right? So I kind of group together whether is it Grab Taxi or Uber, or whether is it delivering food, whether is it Happy Fresh, or delivering flowers. I met this guy who was a founder of delivering flowers. Anything that's got to do with delivery is about like supply chain, it's about delivery time. And you see like a lot of overlap in that space, right? So now today I'm delivering books, tomorrow I want to deliver TVs, and then tomorrow I want to deliver food and groceries, right? So I think that's one space. The other space is, I call it more like local commerce, where it's along the lines of you've got fitness, you've got the beauty salons, you've got things to do when you are around a particular area, right? So it's not like something's coming to you. It's not you're at home and you're lazy and something's coming to you and you're going out. So we see ourselves in the second space, not the first space. So we are starting with fitness, gym studios. We realized that after talking to consumers, they do more than just gyms when they go out. So once you are out there in, say, Orchard Road working out, you actually, after that, our users actually go for massages. They actually find something to eat. So we find that by focusing on the customer, we can actually open up more categories to actually be an integral part of their lifestyle. So I would say that probably the difference is between one, it's more of a delivery service. The other piece is more of a lifestyle, nearby e-commerce type of service.
Great, excellent. Now, another question for you, Joel. So we already got a good explanation of how Grab Taxi faces some sort of local conditions that are different from, say, the Silicon Valley analog, if we just say Uber in California. But what do you think, are there any sort of specific local challenges in Southeast Asia or in Korea that KFIT faces that are maybe a little different from what a US analog like ClassPass might face?
Yeah, I guess the first thing is that a lot of times I think when we build a startup, the first 6 to 12 months, we try to be inspired by a model and follow closely to a model so that, because there's almost like 100 options for you to build a product. A lot of times by following a model, at least we are more focused in terms of execution. But after 6 to 12 months, it becomes clearer what the opportunity is locally. So there are different ways to kind of slice it. I think on one perspective is consumers. Once you build a product, we have consumers on it, we get real feedback, and they are telling us what our product is. So I've done like consumer groups over maybe about 150 of our paying customers, and I realized that the product we were building, or we thought we were building, is not really what they think we are building. So we thought we were building a gym and fitness membership. They thought we were building an activity platform for them to do things around them. So that's when we realized that, hey, that's a bigger opportunity. I think the second piece is also, as part and parcel of building a startup, we talk to good investors along the way, and really provide insights on industries and sizing, the market sizing, and how other people have failed or succeeded in this particular country or particular geography. So for example, say in Korea, we started in the fitness space, and now we're expanding into beauty wellness in many parts of the markets we're in, except Korea, because we realized that in Korea, there are at least 5 to 10 well-funded players just in the beauty vertical, right? Whereas the fitness vertical in Korea is way larger than any market we have in Southeast Asia. For example, there are 15,000 studios in terms of supply, and in, say, Singapore, you have maybe 2,000 to 3,000 studios. So it's like 5 times larger. So I think the market sizing is different by geography, and a lot of it is kind of through conversations, through research, and through execution that we learn it.
So it sounds like you're telling me that you guys are moving away from just fitness and moving into other categories. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we'll get to that later.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about Grab Taxi.
It's called Grab now, by the way.
Excuse me. I can't shake that. I'll do.
Correct you there.
I'll do 10 push-ups. I'm curious. What do you think is your biggest achievement since launching, and then also your biggest pain point? And I think we're all kind of a little more interested in the latter, but we'd love to hear both.
Okay, I'll answer the first question first, and it's kind of related to the second one as well. I think the first one was really the decision we made to disrupt ourselves. So we started off as a taxi app, right? It was going well. We had a few competitors. We were having fun with them, but soon we realized, right, that the taxi space was just one small part of it, right, of the whole transportation fabric. And then we also realized that we didn't just build a taxi app, right? We built a platform that was able to match demand and supply in real time, right? But for the longest time, I mean, the natural progression for that was to obviously go into private cars. But for the longest time, we were quite resistant to that ourselves because for many reasons, right? One is, well, we were going to antagonize our taxi drivers who were there to support us, right? Who gave us a chance. And the other reasons were, in some markets, it was gray, right? It wasn't like entirely legal. Singapore is a bit different. Fortunately for us, the government has been very open and progressive about it. Not so much in some of the other markets where we operated in, where there were certain interests that needs to be protected. But it took a while. But internally, we made a decision. It wasn't the most popular decision, but it was a decision that we had to make, whereby we said, okay, as a company, we're gonna put all our resources, put our best people on this problem, and we're gonna launch private car service, right? So that involved restructuring the company, putting a lot of emphasis on operations in this part of this new business. Even the product and technology were all geared around this objective. And within, I think it was sometime middle of last year where we made this change. And within 6 months, our Grab car business, which is our private car business, grew bigger than our taxi business.
Is that in terms of revenue or usage or cars on the road?
Across multiple metrics, right? Across multiple dimensions, rides, revenues. I mean, it's a known fact that our private car business has better margins than taxi, right? As well. So that was the, I think, in a way, when we look back, was sort of one of my proudest achievements in Grab.
When you were having those discussions, where did you personally fit in? Were you arguing in favor of introducing private cars, or were you someone who's a little more cautious towards it?
This is a good question. I was actually on leave during this time.
Nice save.
Well, I was actually on leave, but I knew this discussion was going on. I knew the reorg was going to happen. I just didn't know what the details were. But I also knew that it was something that we needed to do, right, in order to survive this war and to be relevant.
Well, why did it need to be done?
Simply because if we played just in the taxi space, yes, we were improving what was there before, but if we wanted to achieve, we were going for the moonshot, right? We wanted to achieve the quantum leap improvements in the public transport space. We need to do something radical. We need to do something very different.
Well, one thing I wonder is, I was talking to a taxi driver yesterday, and this driver said that Grab makes ultimately about 40 cents per taxi ride. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Whereas on Grab car, it's a 20% commission. Is that accurate?
It's variable, so it starts at 20%, but it depends on what the driver does, depending on where the driver is. But yeah, on average, it's 20%.
Well, so with that in mind, do you look back and think to yourself, oh, we should have just done Grab car from the start? I mean, that's obviously what Uber has done in all of its markets. They've avoided taxis very diligently. Do you look back and say, we should have just ignored taxis altogether? We should have been doing Grab Car from the start.
If we were trying to optimize just for earnings, maybe, yeah. But there aren't, at least for now, there aren't enough supply. Let's say we were to let's take Singapore for example, right? And we just focus on the private car space. There aren't enough supply to meet the demand because there's a huge demand for point-to-point transport in Singapore. And I think any company in this space that's able to build the biggest network of supply, whether it's in taxis, across taxis, cars, or even bikes in countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, that company is going to provide the best reliability, best service to our users.
Let's see what else we got here. There's been an overlap in investors for Ola, which is sort of the leading local car hailing app in India, and then also Didi Kuaidi in China. Many shared investors, including SoftBank and Tiger Global. And there's also been some news of collaboration, but I'm curious, have you ever gone and visited those offices, or has Anthony, the founder of Grab, ever gone and visited those offices? Has there been a lot of sincere, genuine collaboration, or are you guys, do you still operate more or less independently?
We do more than just have coffee on a Sunday, if that's what you're asking. But personally, I have been to Tokyo, for example, to meet with Masayoshi-san and the rest of the alliance partners. We share stories and discuss. We recently, it was actually Lyft and Didi who recently announced a integration of the app, so that you can basically, like, if you're from China and then you visit the US and you fire up the Didi app, you can call a ride, and that ride will be provided by Lyft, for example. So the plan is to make that available across all four partners. So let's say you're in Southeast Asia, you have the Grab app, you go to China or India or the US, fire it up, book a ride, and you'll get a ride serviced by our alliance partners. So think of it like a roaming service for ride sharing apps.
And so the goal is to roll that out everywhere. Does that mean if a tourist from Beijing visits Singapore and opens Grab, opens Didi, then he'll see the Grab supply?
That's right. That's the plan. Yeah.
And will it be the Grab interface too, or just?
No, just as a native experience through the Didi app.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What we need to do on our side is to make sure that our drivers can speak Mandarin. That's about it. Yeah.
Which shouldn't be too hard in Singapore, right?
Singapore not too hard, but imagine Thailand. That's gonna be tough.
But what about beyond just the mere apps? I think that whenever you have an industry as cutthroat as ride hailing, and then you have an overlap in investors, a lot of people might speculate and say they're going to merge, right? There's going to be consolidation. If that were to happen, what do you think are the conditions that would have to exist in order for a merger to happen? I've asked this to a few other employees, these companies, and some of their investors, and they all kind of have a different opinion. But I'd like to hear from you. What would need to happen in order for there to be a merger, do you think?
I think for now, where we are very clear as to where the markets that we're going to play in, and it's quite clearly demarcated. There's no real need to merge per se. We do share ideas and technology, product, marketing across, but I personally don't see a real need to officially merge at this point. I think we are operating in our local space. We know the market the best. We will continue to compete in our respective markets and to to provide the best possible service to our users in the most localized manner. Yeah, I mean, to me, there's no real need to merge at this point. Yeah.
No real need, but would it be a matter of funding, do you think, or would it be a matter of just investors wanting a return? Or?
Right. I mean, funding-wise, I mean, as you may know, DD is also invested in us in Lyft, and we, as you mentioned, we share investors as well. So yeah, it seems to be working at this point. So the details of that, I mean, I guess we've got to ask Anthony, but at this point, yeah, we don't see a real need to merge.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about regulation. You told me before we went on stage that there was an update on Singapore LTA ride-hailing. I don't know if you're confident enough to say that on stage. I'm certainly not. Or if anyone in the audience is updated on this, feel free to fill us in. Recent like 5 minutes ago, regulations from LTA about ride-hailing. I don't know. Anyways, well, so what do you, in your opinion, has it taken Singapore, have they been slow to enact regulations to ride-hailing, or have they been fast? I mean, from what I've seen, it's happened in the Philippines, it's happened in Indonesia. I actually had my money on Singapore being the first. What we got was a regulation that said you can do ride-hailing as long as it's only twice a day, which makes no sense, right? So what are your thoughts on the prospects of regulation for Singapore, and also the past? Why do you think it's taken so long for Singapore to do this?
Yeah, I think, so I can mention, I think that LTA has made an announcement about regulations for the private hire vehicle space. So essentially, drivers on a private hire vehicle will need to go through a licensing process. And then there are a number of criteria that they need to meet. They have been looking at this for a while, like I'd say at least 12 months. So they have engaged us and the respective stakeholders for a long time. I think where they wanted to do was to strike a right balance between regulations and not being over-regulated as well, because we don't want to discourage drivers from being, to be part of this ecosystem, and at the same time, not offend certain parties too much.
Certain parties being the taxi drivers, correct?
The taxi drivers and the guys in those ecosystems. Yes.
So would you say that this new regulation that's imposing training on private car hired drivers, is that over-regulation? I mean, that would presumably mean that maybe I need to take classes if I want to ride a Grab car. Do you think that that's too much, or perhaps unenforceable? What's your take on that?
I think the LTA got the balance pretty right, and I'm not just saying this just to earn brownie points, right? You're not here, obviously, but so I'll give you an example. The taxis, as a taxi driver, you need to take about 60 hours of training. With the new private hire car regulation, you need to take about 10 hours of training. So it's not too onerous on the drivers, and they'll be given at least 9 to 12 months to obtain this license. So I think it was a very pro-business move by the government to do this, and I think it would help the ecosystem as a whole.
Well, that could also potentially mean that you might need to provide this training, or not necessarily?
So the details of that has yet to be released, but I believe it's going to be done by a centralized party.
Okay. Great. Let's talk a little bit about K-Fit, Joel. You were just talking about how you're moving away from the fitness model and moving into other categories. Makeup and beauty is one that was mentioned, not for Korea, but for other markets, right? If someone were to say this sounds an awful lot like Groupon, what would your response to that be?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that we're not moving away from it. I think we're extending out categories. So very similar to what KLJ was mentioning, the platform that we have built for fitness studios and gyms can be actually leveraged across multiple industries, because the booking system, the content, reviews and ratings. So we see that as part and parcel of the foundation of building local commerce, right, across the different categories. We don't particularly see ourselves similar to Groupon, right? I think, of course, we can draw similar comparisons, but Groupon, I think, overall is a deal side. It's got multiple verticals, so it's got restaurants, spas, and so on, but also it has goods, it's got travel deals. So predominantly people go there to find a good deal. I think for what we are building here is building a lifestyle product where it's things that you can do within the area that you live in. So we find that even the users that use KFit, they're actually going to 3 to 5 different places, but normally within where they live. So as we populate more and more supply within where they live, ideally, what we are actually building essentially is a hyper-local commerce platform, right? That helps businesses with underutilization and helps consumer with discovery and to actually go to their favorite places easily, right, on a platform.
But so it won't be, if it won't be deal driven, then what would be the hook? How will the money be changing hands?
Yeah, I think if it's deal driven, then it's merely driven by price point as a primary function, and then sacrificing quality, sacrificing different things or convenience. So the way that we are building KFit primarily is to optimize convenience, is to optimize relevance, and pricing becomes secondary. So in the long run, so for example, today users are also booking, say, access to gyms on a full price, right? On a per entry full price, because it's convenient to do it on the platform. So I think that comes first before pricing.
So you guys recently made the transition from offering unlimited classes to, I think, a finite amount of classes. Was it 4 a month?
Sorry, 10?
10 a month.
Yeah.
And so what was the reason for that change? I mean, it would seem to me that if you have too many people that are using that are taking too many classes, then ultimately you guys have to operate on a loss, and that presents a problem. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd like to hear your explanation for why you made that change.
Yeah, so I guess the way we look at it is, we have 3 cohorts of customers, right? So it's the low usage customers, and the medium usage and high usage. So when we capped the membership at 10, it only affected 8% of our users, which were actually using about 30-40% of the classes, whereas 92% were actually doing less than 10.
But is it accurate to say that you were making most of your money from those 92%?
Well, I think it's on average, usage is about 6 to 7 times, which is kind of close to our break-even point. So we find that an economy that makes more sense is whereby, first and foremost, there are users who only go once or twice a month. And by allowing them to pay as they go, they actually save money by doing that. So they can pay $10, $20. Say, for example, if you're flying to Singapore and you're going to do 2 classes, or just go to the gym tomorrow, you can just pay $10. You don't have to pay $99 for an entire month. So I think that's number one for the low users.
So that you're also no longer really a subscription company then, correct?
Yeah, so it's a blended based on the different customer cohorts. So we have a huge base of our users that are still on the same plan, which is capped at 10, and they have no issues using the product because they've never hit the 10 cap anyway. And then anyone who wants to go more than 10, they would have to pay the 99, and then they just pay per entry on top of the 99. So then I think it really is the more that you go, ideally, you should pay a little bit more on top of the 99 that you already have. So that, I think, creates a pricing that kind of makes sense for us to ensure that it's a win-win-win, right, for the partners. Because the last thing we want is to reduce the fees we pay partners. Neither do we want to increase the fees overall, right? Also, at the same time, we want to be responsible to our investors because the last thing we want to build is a VC to C model, right, where venture capital money goes to consumers. So I think we want to make sure that's sustainable, where we can actually be gross profit profitable to continue providing this service.
What about consolidation? I'm curious from both of you guys. It seems like we haven't really seen much consolidation. Thinking about the sharing economy, startups in general, we really haven't seen much consolidation in ride-hailing, except there's been a few cases in India and I think one in London. But there's been lots of consolidation in services. So for example, HomeJoy and a lot of those home cleaning startups last year, they all merged in the United States and the UK, and then in India there was a bunch of those food delivery startups. They all merged. We talked about consolidation with GrabTaxi. Do you ever consider consolidating, you guys already did sort of merge with another competitor, but is that something that you think about as you progress?
Yeah, so I think in our space, in the past 1 year, there were probably over 50 companies that was in the space. And of course, there are also opportunities to consolidate. I think there are two reasons why companies will consolidate. One is, for financial, to put numbers that looks better together to raise, from investors. The other is real consumer value proposition, right? That's improved. I personally, I don't believe in number one, because it's really short term and good investors see through that anyway. The reality is that we should only consolidate if there's a real value proposition, and in most times there isn't, right? And when there isn't a value proposition, then it's always easier to just build it organically, right? Rather than the complications of platform, culture, right? And so on.
I just like to echo what Joel said. I mean, there were opportunities to consolidate as well for us, but we needed to look at what the value proposition was, right?
What about someone like Gojek, right, where they have a really strong handle in Indonesia? Is that something that you guys have talked about?
Not me personally, but I mean, there were discussions, maybe a while back, not recently.
There's the Harvard boy connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, Anthony and Nadim are quite good friends. So I guess that's where it started. But again, it has to be aligned, right? And it's not just numbers, but also the culture and whether it makes sense from a product integration perspective and so on, right? So.
Got it. Thanks. Well, we're out of time, so thank you so much for chatting, guys. Thank you for joining us.